Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Burly Bird Live. And I just realised that the video view is not working. Oh, God. I think people can hear me, but they can't see me. This is no good at all. Let's now figure out what is going on here. Good evening, everyone. Can we confirm that I can be heard right now? The voices. Yeah, there we go. That sounds promising. Let's see if we can fix this. No, that's definitely not it. There we are. I think we should now be appearing, hopefully, for everyone. Let's just get a confirmation in the chat. That would be amazing. Yeah, there we go. We are back. We're good. So, right. Lovely. Right, so apologies for that slightly false start there, but we are ready. We are live. Welcome, everyone, to a brand new episode of System Link for Wednesday, the 8th of January, 2025. We are back. First show of the new year, and as always, I'm joined by my ever-loyal co-host, Mike Hazelton, from the Xbox Guide. Mike, Happy New Year, welcome back, and how are we doing in this first show of the year?
Yeah, good. Hitting me with the date there, that's unusual. I feel like you're trying to confirm that we're actually doing this at the correct time and not...
Yeah, confirming
just rehashing old episodes.
Yeah, we're not just putting
the news
those
doesn't change.
not putting those VODs up like 3 weeks late. So I'm committing to that. Yeah. So on that note, for anyone that didn't catch our last Burly Bird Live or System Link streams of December 2024, we've got a few little iterative changes we brought to the show. The first big one, and just shout out to our Discord community who have been so supportive of us all throughout our run, ever since we started doing this, but particularly today when we launched our community question, which we're going to be doing every single week. The response we had tonight, which was about our deep dive topic around the Switch 2 leaks. Your perspectives, your ideas, the conversation that flowed from that was fantastic. So thank you so much for that input, and we're going to be referring to that later in the show tonight. We'll be going through all of your comments, but please, when we get there as well, as you're going through the show, feel free to weigh in chat. Anything that Mike and I are discussing when we get to our headlines, it is always appreciated. Your thoughts, your feelings, your engagement. It's something that we really, really kind of are keen to cultivate and have in our show. So please continue to do that. Wavy Foxy, Plug Socket, Big Manny, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Second thing is we're going to have a Spotify recorded version of the show. It's going to go up on the same day as the VOD version, which will now be going live on YouTube on Thursday. So there'll be now an audio version of System Link that will be available on Spotify and Podbean for free, and that will go up alongside our YouTube version, which will go up again on a Thursday. So please look out for that. If you can't check out our live show, there will always be those video on demand or now audio flavors of the System Link that you can check out in the next day or so. So we have not exactly, it's not been a slow start. We can hit the ground running, I think, this year. I was always concerned about that. It's the first time we've ever actually done our live podcast series at the start of a year, where historically, outside of maybe an Xbox Direct towards the end of the month, not normally fertile ground for some really interesting stories, but we've got several headlines to get to tonight. And as mentioned at the top of the show, our deep dive this evening is on the Switch 2 leaks, which seem to be mounting up it's almost unavoidably at this point, and that will shape our conversation moving forward. I can't wait to see you on my Spotify Wrapped. That's great. Thank you, Wavy Foxy. That's so good to know that we'll be making a cameo appearance in there. So I'm going to kick things off this evening with the recent, I suppose, somewhat vague, quote-unquote, confirmation of either a working title for the next Xbox, or indeed perhaps how it's going to be branded. I don't just off the bat, I really don't think for 1 second that Xbox Prime is going to be the name of the console.
Surely not.
And I'd like to lock that in at 9 on the 8th of Jan. Please feel free to clip this out and, have me eat cake in like a year's time when it's revealed that that's the terrible name they've chosen. I didn't think anything could be worse than Series something, but here we are. Xbox Prime apparently is the either working title or actual title of the next Xbox console. I think, well, it's no secret. It's an open acknowledgement that they're working on a next-gen platform. Either they're exploring a handheld, but also working on their next home console. I do still think there was some skepticism over what this can look like. We've speculated, obviously, that, we've looked at different permutations. Perhaps something akin to a Steam PC, or some kind of integration with that library. Was there anything else from this latest, tough to call it a leak really, it is just a rumor at this point, anything else that stood out for you that was either particularly egregious, something you thought, well, there's no way, or do you think there's some credibility here? Are we kind of ramping up to some kind of reveal?
Well, I think kind of accompanying this was the suggestion that it would launch next year. So that's probably the bit worth talking about. Like the name, it doesn't seem to me like a traditional Microsoft code name, so I'm not really sure where it's come from. And I agree, it's someone suggested it, I think on the Discord as well. Like I would prefer it to they just stop putting the year after it or something.
Yeah.
In it's just Xbox, or maybe you have a handheld version and a console version, and then there's just different models depending on the year.
That leans into the kind of iterative, doesn't it? The iterative thing, especially PlayStation.
Because it will at some point it will get to that stage. But obviously it will be a challenge for parents and people that don't know the system that well to know if games will run on it. But you've had that problem with PC since day one, so I think it's just something people will have to deal with. But as for the year, because there's been a lot, Nvidia have made a lot of announcements at CES, and I think that's what spurred this, 2026 being a realistic date at the end of the year for the console potentially, which would be so quick, feels really quick to me. I feel like the Series X especially has a lot left to give, but I wouldn't be opposed to a new console that soon, just because obviously Microsoft's struggling so much compared to PlayStation, and Switch 2 presumably is going to sell like hotcakes. So,
well, on that, you mentioned obviously about the sort of this boom of handheld gaming and the fact that Switch 2 we're on the cusp of that. James mentioning in chat that one of the issues for both PlayStation and Xbox is the general boom in handheld gaming PCs, the Steam Deck, and the ROG Ally, isn't it, is one of the other handheld consoles, making it generally, his point being, is that it's sort of much easier for people to sort of lean towards PC versus the traditional console space, where Nintendo, again, as always, have carved their own niche. They've got themselves their hybrid approach. They're kind of separate from this conversation. And PlayStation also have clearly shown an interest. The Portal's been adopted much better than I think they could have potentially anticipated. We've seen it now, obviously now supporting cloud streaming. So there is definitely a swerve back to convenient gaming, handheld options, giving people choice. And it's inevitable that they're going to have to respond. The idea of it perhaps being a streaming-only platform, I'm still not sure if I'm convinced on that yet. I want there to be a home console that's I'm playing offline games on. I think that's still important. Certainly for the next generation. Looking beyond, who knows where that's going to head, but it's all about infrastructure and all about whether that's actually going to be stable enough to run it. But I think whatever they choose to do with their handheld and whatever comes next for the console, I would like that premium offline plugged-in experience still. I'm still going to be that market for that.
Yeah, I think if they want to do a streaming version that's cheap, then that's fair enough. But certainly there needs to be a relatively affordable native option available. And part of the news that's come out this week as well was that they're focusing on making a version of the Xbox OS to run on other devices, which for me was that would be the real selling point for an Xbox handheld, would be you have the operating system and all your games on it. If they let that be put on the ROG Ally or other devices, then especially if those devices exist before the Xbox's own one, it does kind of beg the question, why are they bothering to make their own handheld? What's the differentiator going to be?
It's something you've always talked about before, the idea that if they're going to do that, it's devaluing essentially their own hardware. They could just put it elsewhere if they're going to just make it a software thing. Plug Socket noticing, is that a wild Akami in the background? Yes, it very is.
It is indeed.
What game? Can't believe we got an Akami 2 at the Game Awards. That's insane.
Yeah, that's great.
So actually continuing on that line, we've had rumours once again, third year running of an Xbox Direct. The developer directs, I think, actually some of the best things that team has put out this generation. Not only just because I think the focus not just on the behind the scenes, but the actual gameplay that goes with it. We often do get extended looks at games. The Avowed showcase, for instance, was great, and definitely turned my sort of thinking around on that title. Rumors that is cooking, and that either there'll be some kind of short turnaround release date. It'd be nice to have. We often see them, then confirm the slate for the year, because it comes so early, and those vague 2025 window titles like Fable maybe get narrowed down slightly, or I'd love to see South of Midnight pop up in something like that. We are looking at, is it Fable, Doom, South of Midnight, and I feel like I've missed one that's also cooking for this year. There could be isn't there a fourth?
Avowed, I guess.
Avowed, yeah, there you go. So
probably Avowed will be too soon, so soon that you wouldn't expect it to be at the developer direct, I don't think. I think normally they kind of skip the closest game and focus on the ones that are further out. Yeah,
that's fair. So we'll sort of see if they're gonna. I mean, the positive response and the jolly PR that they generated from that, from 2 years running, I think it makes it a no-brainer if that's going to pop up again in January. So I hope we do see that again.
Hi-Fi Rush helped.
Yeah, my God, yeah, I forgot that was Shadow Drop, wasn't it? At the first developer direct, of course. We then, slightly on the other end of the spectrum for Xbox, we have the recent Game Pass update, which was literally just 4 games that are already in Ultimate going to Standard.
So, yeah, it's bad. UFC was the only. So Diablo is coming to PC Game Pass. UFC 5 is coming to Ultimate and PC.
Oh,
and then the rest
I didn't
just
catch
games
that.
going to.
They're the ones. So that's marginally better than what I'd come into the show thinking, that I thought it was just the 4 titles that were the standard games coming across from Ultimate. So, okay, that especially when we have we come off the back of Indie, and it was a strong finish. They had some decent titles coming out. Do we have an Avowed date? Is it February?
Good question. I think we do. I'm pretty sure there's a date attached.
So given that we sort of we've come off a quite a strong finish, we've got the one flag planted with Avowed. We're getting Sniper Elite later this month, which has always traditionally been a really solid game, and that's another nice get for Game Pass. Not a huge amount else confirmed for this first quarter, so I'm hoping they don't. What I don't want to see though is like, don't bring out South of Midnight in like end of Feb, early March. Don't just splurge too big sort of action adventure RPG style titles straight away. Like, they do have this planning problem where they don't spread these titles out. You had Hellblade, and then like either side of it, like 6 months of just empty space, and then we suddenly had like Ara, COD, Flight Sim, Indie, just one after the other, and it just just needs balance.
We had Ara and Age of Mythology in the same month.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Just bizarrely.
Yeah.
December was really quiet. So obviously, we had Indiana Jones, which reviewed really well, and it was a great get. But I don't like the idea that Microsoft could look at it and think, "Oh, we got Indiana Jones, so we don't need to bother with like padding out the rest of the month," because that's not everyone is going to like Indiana Jones. Some people are using Game Pass for like family games. Some people are using it. They love sports games or whatever. So I don't think you can assume because you've got Indiana Jones, it's enough to carry the month. And December was really lean. I don't know how many games it was in total. It's like fewer than 10. It wasn't overall a good month in terms of quantity. And then January, we'll obviously have this developer direct, so we might get some drops as part of that. I think that is what you would hope for, seeing such a lean first half of the month based on this announcement.
Yeah,
we just have to hope there's more coming. And obviously, like you say, we know about Sniper Elite, but
yes, yeah, which I think is back half. It's like the 20th, 21st. It's around that kind of time.
I think, 33 Immortals is this month as well.
Oh, of course. Which, by the way, I mean, one of our surprise hits of last year when we played the beta for that. We had a great time with that. James in the chat, just wanting a quick cliff notes from you, Mike. What is Okami?
I think I had it on PS2. Well, yeah, sorry, it's PS2 there, isn't it? And there's an HD version you can get now. It's basically kind of Zelda with a dog, wolfy kind of dog.
Yeah,
cell shaded. Just really cool. It's one of those where you kind of go around cleaning up the world, but it very much evokes Zelda, and each area you've cleaned up kind of gets all beautified, and yeah, you turn it from like a painted, oily world, a bit like Mario Sunshine, into a nice, vibrant world. But yeah, definitely worth trying. It's really cheap if you want to try the HD version.
James, if you'd played the Prince of Persia reboot, there was a one-off game where Nolan North played the prince, and when he defeated the single enemy in the area, it would sort of like spread and like sort of the corruption would be removed from it. An indie game, The Gunk, has a very similar mechanic to that. And the trailer for Okami 2, if you haven't seen it, it was really sort of well crafted reveal, and it's from the Game Awards, so check that out please on YouTube if you're interested. It is a full sequel coming. We've got the HD version already, but it is a sequel that Capcom are cooking up, which is really cool. So we've also got as well some interesting stats that came out that I found sort of, they were prefaced as being anecdotal, which I thought was a very interesting way of phrasing that, sort of people just telling them the stats about Game Pass, and more specifically game sale cannibalization, sales being affected, rather lowered, because of their game's inclusion in Game Pass. And I believe the stat that was stated was 80% as a drop on Xbox.
Yeah, Chris String, good old Chris String, loves to drop a nice little Xbox.
Just drop in
negative bombshell.
Something, a negative bombshell with like not a huge amount of sourcing to back it up, or at least not publicly anyway, just somewhat cliche there. But I wasn't particularly surprised to read that. I hope people don't sort of do that sort of knee-jerk shock reaction, because of course what would you expect it to be?
I think if you were guessing, it would be around there.
Well, yeah, and also the nature of their inclusion in Game Pass is the developers aren't doing that because they're nice. They're being compensated for that, and we know there's various different versions, whether it's a per download sort of royalty style payment, hours played, numbers of installs and all that kind of thing, or in fact just a straight up, we're gonna cover your dev costs, or we'll pay you a sort of X amount. To a contribution towards. There's a few versions of that. So these devs, these publishers are being compensated for its inclusion.
Yeah, he kind of was beating around the bush and saying like he's on the fence, and then at the end was like, "I'm not on the fence because it's bad for indies." Um, and I would love to see. I can definitely imagine that people would be less likely to buy an indie game because they think it's going to go to Game Pass, or there's so much to play on Game Pass that I don't want to pay for like random indies in the Xbox store. But I'm also not sure how many people do just buy random, like browse the store randomly and buy indie games
Mm.
like that. I think generally it's word of mouth or reviews or whatever. But I also think I would be interested to know if the fact that you effectively don't have to buy games in the same way that you would normally because you've got Game Pass actually frees up some money for you to take a few more risks on stuff. I know that last year especially I spent a lot more, still not, it wouldn't have been even probably over £100, but for me the previous years I don't think I'd spent anything on games at all because I was literally just sitting on Game Pass. But
Right.
last year I spent a bit of money on some indies and some non-indies that I think without Game Pass I would have probably just saved the money for the big releases that I wanted to play, like Indiana
Right.
Jones. And I wouldn't, because that would have been a £70 game. I wouldn't have had the money to pay for Still Wakes the
Yeah.
Deep or whatever else I was playing. So, um, I would actually like to know if he has anything to back up the thing about indies not
Well,
working
yeah.
very well on Xbox, because they release the games on Xbox. Xbox is the last place platform, has the lowest install base, and yet generally the indies at least come to Xbox at some point.
Yeah. Well, and
And you wonder why would you bother doing that?
yeah, we've seen enough also sort of contradictory statements from devs multiple times over saying this helped discoverability of our game on other platforms, which I believe actually Chris String does actually acknowledge in the
Yeah.
article. He does say that, but it helped with discoverability, but also like it made their projects viable. Like the big thing was that whatever the arrangement was with Microsoft, whatever contracts were being offered, that it gave them financial security, and it helped with discoverability as well. They had more players playing their titles, which again, it builds a community, it helps them build their social profile. That then has a knock-on effect for future titles. Like I know that the publisher behind The Descenders have published multiple games on Game Pass, and those games have tangibly done better because the community has then followed them. So there's other factors that I don't think are being considered there, and it really does sort of, it's funny, isn't it? Sort of, you don't get a lot of the same energy being thrown at other publishers about their profitability, this sort of concern that are they making enough money? Is it viable? And it's sort of, I do find it slightly disingenuous where people sort of target Microsoft as like, well, I hope it's doing well. I hope it's actually doing the business. Whereas the sort of the concern for the survival of a multi-trillion-dollar company just seems a little bit. I just think that just seems a little bit false for me. But internet's going to internet, as it often does in these situations.
Yeah, I think as well, Game Pass isn't on its own anymore. You've got PlayStation with a basically competing service that is exactly the same, except doesn't have day one first party in. So if you're making that argument, you can't. No one's buying indie games on Xbox because of Game Pass. Then presumably no one's buying indie games on PlayStation because of PlayStation Plus.
PlayStation Plus, and we've
It's
seen they've had day one titles from third party like Plucky
Yeah,
Squire.
yeah.
That, like you say, it's first party aren't dropping straight away, but Remedy's next game, FBC Firebreak, is going to be day one on Game Pass and PlayStation Plus, which is unusual. You don't often see that.
I wonder if the reason he's making the point is just because the prevalence of Game Pass is so much higher. The attach rate of Game Pass Ultimate, presumably, is a lot higher than whatever the top tier of PlayStation Plus
Premium,
is.
which is the one with like the classics catalog and streaming in it. So
yeah, so like the 80% figure is because for the people that want to play Indiana Jones, so many of them will be doing it on Game Pass. Whereas I don't think you can make the same argument about PS Plus. It's just hasn't probably got the same attach rate.
Yeah, it just doesn't. I just think as well, it's sort of trying to focus on that aspect. It kind of dismisses the idea that Xbox titles might, the multi-platform strategy that we've seen, that PlayStation do as well. So many of those games that they were originally PS5 exclusive have now gone to PC or indeed Xbox as well. So all the major publishers, apart from Nintendo, because they're just weird and do their own thing, but they've got their own audience. It really is a separate thing for them. So I think when you just like for like Xbox and PlayStation, even though PlayStation has double the install base of Xbox this generation, they're still publishing on PC. They're still multi-platforming once the exclusivity window ends. So both of them are using timed exclusives. Both of them are leveraging PC as well. Both of them are exploring a handheld. And they both have a subscription service. There's so little difference between these consoles. When we came into the gen, I feel like when PS5 and Xbox first dropped, there seemed to be, quite a few points of differentiation. Now they are more similar than ever before. For most people, it will come down to what controller do you like better? Do you like offset thumbsticks or do you like them together? That it really has become that superficial. So conversations around profitability and whether the sort of people are doing okay, I do find somewhat a little bit, false.
I'd love to know what the attach rate for Nintendo Online is. Just talking about you've got Game Pass, which has probably got the highest attach rate, then PS Plus, and then Nintendo Online. I don't play any Nintendo stuff online because I haven't found a game that motivates me to do it, and the ones that I thought I would like
suck.
Are crap online.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
Smash Brothers is so egregious, isn't it?
Yeah. Because obviously Nintendo have bundled in all their legacy titles from the N64 back. You do wonder whether their previous strategy of selling those individually, maybe they felt they couldn't get away with doing that again, which was probably fair. I think it was probably a bridge too far to sell all those same games for like a third time or a fourth time.
Yeah.
But yeah, just an interesting thing. Really.
Yeah, for sure.
Whether it made more on the Wii selling them individually versus how they've
bundled it as an online package.
Yeah,
I would like to believe that Virtual Console made more money, but we don't have access to the spreadsheet. James, very succinctly in chat, people should just stop worrying. I agree. I think certainly there's relevant conversation to be talking about in terms of a publisher, especially an indie team's profitability. Are those Game Pass and PlayStation Plus deals good enough even now to make sure that their overheads are covered and they're not going to be at risk of redundancy? We've seen innumerable closures over the last 12 months. Big Manny did mention just in the chat here that I recently bought Nintendo Online again just for the classics catalogue, and I could see people doing that.
Yeah,
I think that's
I'm
fair.
playing Ocarina of Time on it at the moment.
Great.
Using yours.
Yeah, family plan.
So, I don't think, especially the games that are coming to PlayStation, you don't need to worry about the games like Hellblade 2. I would be worried. I think we talked about it at the time. I would be generally worried for that team because I think it did pretty badly, and wasn't what it was hoped to be. And if you're saying that 80% of the people that played it on Game Pass, then it won't have made a lot of money. And you're relying on Microsoft to treat it as if it's a third-party game and say, we're going to offset your development costs, and it's as if we've given you, $100 million
right
for the Game Pass deal, even though in reality you're an internal studio, so it doesn't work like that. But with like Avowed, which obviously we don't have a PlayStation announcement for yet, and other games like that, it's maybe a bit different. And I think it relies on the Steam sales being quite strong, which we have seen in certain cases. I don't think Indiana Jones particularly set the world on fire on Steam. Obviously on PC you've got the game, people can access stuff via Game Pass, but we can use Steam at least to see like generally how real sales of the game are going on PC.
Yeah, and that seeing how that's actually going to shake out when you've then got the possibility of a port going elsewhere. Are people holding out to play it on their preferred platform? Is this then, by contrast to that, Microsoft's way of having their cake and eating it too, because they've then been able to, support their subscription service, and then they're making back that revenue? I'd love to know how Sea of Thieves did on PlayStation, because that was a full price release. It didn't go into Plus. A couple of moments from
was
chat.
in the chart for a while, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it did, and it was prominently
there wasn't
featured.
Anything else. There wasn't much it was up against, but it still...
No, but still. But it was at a time when a lot of people were then waiting for Astrobot, and they were getting ready for, they were still playing Helldivers. So, a couple of things from chat. James agreeing, only bought Nintendo Online for that reason, for the classics catalog, and I'm kind of the same really. That's kind of the one main thing I use it for. Big Manny also playing Ocarina of Time at the moment. That happens to be his game he's playing, which is great. And James very, very accurately stating, just thinking about all the games Nintendo sit on that are absolute remaster gold mines. How many times have we said, like, where the hell is insert GameCube game here?
Well, this is it, and this is, I think, we've talked in the past about, are they ever going to put GameCube games on the Nintendo Online? And I don't think they will until they've really farmed that well of remasters.
And then
and
we'll see it.
And then we'll see it.
It's another generation removed when Switch 2 arrives, that it's likely that I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to get a GameCube, my dream of the GameCube like catalog in the online. There's no way they do it for this gen now. There's no way. They added Game Boy Advance games. They added something else. I forget, maybe Mega Drive or something in the expansion pack. And you put the GameCube library on there, you got me subbing. You got me subbing for forever, Shigsy. New GameCube will shake up the gaming space. Yeah, oh my god, my favorite console ever. My stepdaughter told me the other day that the GameCube is officially her favorite platform as well. So my influence is complete, which is great. You shaking your head.
Carry is so bizarre that it had a carry handle in it.
It's the best. I love it. I've got my little case with a handle pokes out the top. Right.
4 gamers.
4 gamers, baby. You slot it in the front with your disc thing. You got like the Velcro disc pouch. Come on, it's the best.
The Panasonic GameCube. If you haven't seen it, Google it. That's still the coolest console I've ever seen.
Yes.
And if I ever have any money, I will definitely try to buy a working one.
Is that the one with the DVD player in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the big silver thing, isn't it?
Looks like a 90s hi-fi.
Big silver, like
thing.
Tron. Yeah, totally. Not that. All over that. That'd be amazing. I love the fact that chat has just clocked Pumpkin in the background. He's not particularly interested in System
Not fallen off yet.
No, he's not fallen off yet, because I had to reset him during episode 3 of Dulcet Tones. So far, so good. He's hanging in there. No, he's the best boy. So, another sort of continuing our Xbox discussion. Some really... I don't quite know what to make of this with Black Myth, Wukong, the Series S stuff, the fact that it's not obviously published on Xbox, and I don't really know what to believe anymore. In terms of, is it exclusivity? Is it they can't optimize? Both, neither. I'm really having a hard time deciphering what I believe with this particular story.
We've actually had conflicting statements now, haven't we? I think 'cause there's been a developer that said it's kind of memory issues.
Right.
Microsoft I don't think anyone official. Well, a Microsoft spokesperson has said it's not a technical issue. Basically hinting that it's a deal. Phil, I think, dodged the question in the way that he does. People have been trying to play it on PC on like similar spec to see kind of how it fares, but it's one of those, like, it's hard to know without someone coming out and saying it. I don't know why you wouldn't just say there's an exclusive deal unless, like, contractually they're not allowed to say. But like from a if it was Xbox that had an exclusive deal, I'd rather it's a good thing if we talk about Xbox putting everything everywhere and it kind of diminishes your affinity to the brand and you feel like you're not getting your value that you paid for the console. If they then come out and say, well, we're working for you, we've paid this money to have these deals on these games so that you get to play them first and stuff. Like, that's not a bad thing from a platform perspective.
No, we've seen it. It's happened for decades. It's a way of drumming up interest. It's advertising for your platform, and it can shift hardware. The right game can make people pick it up.
And stuff like Final Fantasy, I think at the bottom of the trailer it said like exclusive at least until, and it had a date, and it's like that's so upfront, and yet stuff like Black Myth, you haven't got a clue.
I know.
And then Death Stranding came out of nowhere. So
yeah, I never expected that on Xbox. I didn't even think that was a timed exclusive deal. I thought that PlayStation had that thing wrapped up. But Just goes, but again, just we talked about it earlier. It just goes to show, doesn't it, how in flux a lot of these deals are, and that actually what we assume to be something exclusive is actually Stray, Sifu, Death Stranding.
Yeah.
All titles are associated with PS5 have jumped ship.
Apparently, it runs really badly on almost any hardware, no matter how good your PC is. It doesn't run great. So, from my point of view, if I owned it already, I would want them to patch it and improve the performance of the platforms it's already on before they start porting it to Xbox.
Yep.
So for me, that's probably what the situation is. They need to sort the game out and look at porting it.
It's more likely to be a sort of performance quality issue in that sense at this point. Than
I don't think I'd go as far as saying the reason they haven't done it is because it can't run on Series S.
Right.
I would say the reason it hasn't happened is because it runs badly the places it's available now, and they want to sort that out.
Yeah,
first.
Absolutely. Quick cat intermission here in the chat. James asking, what's Pumpkin's opinion on Switch 2? I think it's been made pretty clear. It's pretty abundant how he feels about it. He is not
He's got his own Switch already, hasn't he?
Probably. Who knows at this point. Burly Bird Arcade. Pumpkin actually looks like the cat from Stray. I agree, actually. He's got the body of my smaller cat, Pom Pom. He's got like the sort of... The cat from Stray looks more like sort of like the frame of Pom Pom, but the face and colouring is definitely Pumpkin, for sure.
Pumpkin's a bit of a unit, isn't he?
Absolute heifer. He is... Yeah. He's stopping you from coming into the club. He's got it covered. We've also got some interesting stuff, actually. I always assumed that Call of Duty games were expensive to make. That was not something that required a huge amount of original thinking. Multiple teams, a huge publisher, massive marketing budget. But 600 mil for, I believe that was for the last Modern Warfare, and then pushing 700 for Black Ops 6. Pretty remarkable in terms of, when I think about the absolute top end of the industry. I imagine something like, I could see GTA pushing closer to the billion mark, just in terms of man-hours and, yeah.
So it was actually, because I misread this at first. I thought it was the last 3 Call of Duty games, but it wasn't. It was Black Ops 3, Modern Warfare, 2019 Modern Warfare, and Black Ops Cold War. So Black Ops Cold War took $700 million.
Oh shit! Okay, no, I misread that as well. Okay,
so it's probably is $1 billion for Black Ops 6, which is, I mean, you wonder at what point it makes that amount of money back, because you would think even with the launch sales, I don't know. I'd have to do the maths on it, but that's a lot of money to make back. 80% of your Xbox sales are not proper premium revenue. I was going to comment on this about GTA 6. Someone was talking about it, about whether they'll delay it, and I was thinking, like, is it a risk if your game's costing $1 billion to make? Can you fuck the launch up that much so that you wouldn't make your money back with something like GTA 6? Because it will be like Cyberpunk, where so many people will pre-order it that it should make its money before it's even come out. But there's presumably certain things you could do before it launches that would tarnish that to the extent that it starts to affect pre-orders and you can get into really difficult territory. But you would think that, like, GTA is one of the few, probably one of only like 2 or 3 games that are immune from that.
Yeah, well, let's not forget Cyberpunk was so bad it actually got delisted on PlayStation, didn't it? And it never.
Yeah, I think it still made, even with that in mind, even with the refunds, it still made its money. Like at launch, basically,
which is crazy, isn't it? Like, and it's the scale of it, the fact that this industry has become, it's got to such a growth point that, in terms of gross revenue, you can see a lot of stats that point to, like, the movie, film, movie, TV, and music industries combined not generating the kind of revenue and forward improvement that you've seen from the games industry, and no more so than in titles like this, where they've dominated sales, and you can still, for 100 weeks straight, you were seeing GTA 5 still in the chart, and something like Call of Duty, they've been very clever, I think, with carefully, slowly but surely ramping up over the last few Call of Duties their monetization streams. We've got battle passes, cosmetics, the in-game currency, the Vault Edition, the early access. There is and the special editions, the physical special edition boxes. That's off the top of my head, 5 different review streams on top of the actual purchase of the game. Forgetting obviously people that are then playing it on a subscription service. So they have certainly got, they've got the option for people to spend the money to recoup that.
It does make you wonder whether, if they cut the campaign out, how much money would they save off? How much? Because obviously you've got all these different dev teams working on it, and you could cut probably a couple of them out if you don't have a campaign.
Yeah,
I'm sure Zombies probably adds one developer to the mix, but they probably make some good money after release on Zombies. But it also makes you wonder about Battlefield with all the studios involved in that. I'm sure it wouldn't have cost quite what Call of Duty makes because they know they won't make the money back in the same way that Call of Duty would. But it's going to be pushing like 400, 500 million. You would think for the most recent Battlefield game that they wouldn't have even come close. They're not going to make half of that, I wouldn't have thought, on Battlefield. So
right.
It's risky, isn't it?
Especially off the most recent one. James mentioning in chat, the sort of the idea of GTA 6 being a sort of a terrifying launch. There's the potential of what that is going to be in terms of how it dominates the industry. It's fascinating, but also his point being that maybe we, as an industry, as a community, we should be a bit less harsh on monetization. I half agree with that. I think the idea of a developer giving people choices is not the problem at all. The cost, I think, sometimes associated with those choices, I think sometimes is too high. But I don't think fundamentally there's anything wrong with offering people ways to buy things in your game, because you can just ignore it. When it affects balance, or it sort of seems like it's you've obviously invested enough and that's now enhanced your profile or given you sort of early unlocks for things, that's when I think it gets into tricky territory. But generally I've never really had an issue with it, because if you don't want it, you just don't buy it.
And with Game Pass, it's going to become more necessary to have those sort of monetization options in, and then you will have the people that have paid full price for the game seeing those monetization things and thinking, oh, why am I seeing this? I've paid for the game,
right?
But 80% of people haven't paid for it.
Exactly right. Couple of sort of last quick headlines now before we get into our deep dive. Both Horizon Zero Dawn and Helldivers have been confirmed to be getting films from PlayStation Studios, which continues a long-standing trend. We've now seen several movies. The Twisted Metal TV series, Uncharted had a film adaptation, Last of Us on HBO with its TV series. So we've seen plenty of cross-media adaptations for these franchises. I think they're both really sensible choices. Horizon, I think particularly, has the scope to be very cinematic. And Helldivers, if done right, I actually think that would make a fantastic TV series. That could really connect. So nice to see PlayStation Studios continuing to explore their IP. It will help when future titles come out, future generations of the console. There'll be people that recognize those for the first time from discovering it through the film and the TV show adaptations. I'm sure many people have come to The Last of Us from that HBO series. So hope very much we see them continue to do that.
Both quite expensive, you would think, to produce. I mean, Helldivers, to make that believable is going to require some.
It's going to be a pricey,
some special effects, but
yes,
both should be really cool.
Yeah, and I'm hoping they leverage technology like we've seen from the Star Wars and Star Trek franchises with that volume, that sort of AR wall that they use to sort of extend sets and create live things for the actors to respond to. I think that's a really nice concept that, again, hopefully will bring those costs down and make the show or movie more viable. So let's get to the deep dive for tonight. We put to the community this evening, our new feature is we're going to have a central question tied to our deep dive topic, which tonight is on the cavalcade of Switch leaks that have happened for the sequel console, Nintendo's new platform. We've seen, I haven't clicked on them because I decided to, and we'll get there, but I decided to just avoid as much as I could because so much of it's unconfirmed. From what I understand from headlines I've glanced at, full technical specs on this thing are now out in the wild. In fact, there were talk of, I saw a mention of an article that there were like demo units being shown behind closed doors at CES because accessory manufacturers were targeting in April. They were kind of praying for April that this thing was coming out. So there's Nintendo just need to announce it. Like they really do.
This is the thing, and we'll get to it. I know you want to go through some of the points that people have made on Discord, but for me, this is on Nintendo because they're announcing it so late. Like there were leaks last year, there were leaks before last year about what Switch 2 was going to be, and I think we've talked, having not seen any leaks, and said it's going to be an iterative update. It's going to look the same. It's going to be. We know it's going to be backwards compatible. They're not going to be reinventing the wheel this time. And I think half the time people leak stuff that they think it's going to be, so that if it's right, they can be like, yeah, well, I said
I was an insider. So yeah.
This is different, like you say, because it's accessory manufacturers that have got the models of the computer models of the console, so they can create stuff that will work with it. But yeah, for me, it's on Nintendo.
Yeah, for sure.
I get why they didn't announce it before Christmas, and we talked about that, but it's on them. If they want to release a console in March, April, or May, and feel that they have to announce it at the start of the year because they don't want to cannibalize Christmas sales, that's up to them. It's going to leak, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and they've had enough shareholder translated tweets to note, like you mentioned, the backwards compatibility reveal, that they're going to make sure that Switch Online works with it as well. So they have been, with their own messaging, building up to something, building up to its reveal, which is now, I feel like, been undercut by those sort of terrible, classic, sort of close-up, terrible photo shots. Like, I saw those magnetic Joy-Con, which, first of all, the magnetic part makes me very nervous. I do think that's a terrible idea. Yeah. Not only just for connectivity and the issues that will come with that, but just how easy they're going to be to snap off and break. Very nervous about that. So that wasn't particularly exciting when I saw that. The wacky trigger that's on the back, we don't quite know what that looks like, and I just feel like they should be bigger anyway. They're so piddly and small. It's just, yeah, it's tough. That's tough. That's not particularly enthused by that, but yeah.
I have so many problems with the Joy-Cons that seeing like a visual of the new Joy-Con, I don't care. I want to know, have you fixed the reliability of them? Is the range better? Do they still need line of sight? Line of sight in this day and age is just insane for a peripheral.
It should be Bluetooth.
I think I've probably got slightly defective Joy-Cons, but I have sent them back a couple of times, and they still need line of sight to the console. So
it's not practical in everyone's setups. I mean, I've just replaced them all at the arcade. The Burly Bird arcade used to have them on a projector, and I've just got rid of them all.
They're so small that I feel like I should be able to like lean back on the sofa, and like put my leg up and have it like resting on my lap. But I can't because it needs
separate and relaxed like this. Because that conceptually is quite nice, actually. Halving the controller and being able to have it kind of on your lap like this.
That's generally how I would play, especially the games that I do have on
That's
Switch.
Pretty cozy. But then early on, when I've found the same issues with you, the line of sight problem, the disconnect, the syncing, and the stick drift on top of that, let's not forget that that's also a huge reason for why those Joy-Cons often get sent back. I just went Pro Controller, and I haven't looked back. That thing is... It's the only console I can think of that has both the worst and one of the best controllers I've ever used in the same platform.
Well, I mean, Xbox is good pushing. Like I've got 5 or 6 Xbox controllers, and they've all, including the one that I use every day, they've all got issues, all got stick drift.
Interesting.
Just the main one is like only
I got
5%.
I'll give shout out to PlayStation. Other than the plastic eroding off of the covers,
classic.
That's stick covers.
It's not a PlayStation if the analog stick doesn't.
Yeah, if there's not, just like if you don't just erode it, that's But both my DualShock 4s for PS4 and the DualSense controller is lovely. It's a really, really good fit. It feels like the Pro controller on Switch. And actually, the Pro controller is the only controller I've had that hasn't had any issues whatsoever. Never an issue with its internal battery because it's a USB charge. The sticks, the comfortability. That is honestly one of the best performing controllers I've ever used. So I hope we see compatibility for them and a version of them going forward. I hope that does come back.
Surely they'll be compatible. For me, and I think I don't know if Microsoft did a patent or something. Something came out over Christmas about Xbox controllers. And I think they said like modular joysticks, which suggested to me that you can take the analog sticks out, not easily probably, but at the moment you have to solder the thing. It's a nightmare to replace them.
There's no chance, right?
Ideally they'd be the Hall effect sticks, but none. I don't think any of the first parties are using those yet. But that's what I want from next gen controllers.
Yeah,
but
the ability for them to be modular almost and repairable.
Yeah, the other aspect of the leak. So from what I've seen, I haven't seen the full tech specs. I think the motherboard leaked, which Digital Foundry have commented on, and said that they were based on that they would expect it to be below PS4 Pro specs. And I don't know if there's any more detail beyond that, but that's kind of as far as I've gone into it. Which I think is maybe it's slightly lower than we would have anticipated. Like Xbox One, they were saying Xbox One spec, which is, I don't know, seems a bit lightweight to me. But if it means it can be cheap enough, and knowing Nintendo it will probably have a premium on it, then it's worth doing. I don't think they can release a console for like 500 quid.
No, I agree. I don't think they're the platform to do that at all. I don't think there's a market for that, for them at least. I don't think that's that, especially when the controllers, 2 Joy-Cons to get a set 70 quid. Games sell Pro controllers for $64.99. So there's no room for that. I just think that's just that would be nonsense. I think that the power argument, and James has mentioned, that it'll be enough. They don't tend to rely on that rat race, and I think we've now seen enough scaled down ports that have mixed success on Switch of big third-party games. That has been the best supported third-party console from Nintendo in a decade. That there's been so many ports of genuinely big titles regularly coming to Switch. The quality of those ports is still very much open for debate. There's huge variance there, but they've proven it. With 2017 essentially mobile chipset hardware, they've been able to make that work. So I think they'll.
I guess that's my reticence is. I get there's things they needed to improve: the kickstand, the Joy-Con, the screen, battery life, speed, things like that. That can be improved. It's whether it just doesn't seem like that much of a leap to me. Maybe similar to like going from Xbox One X to Xbox Series S,
right?
Or Xbox, maybe even Series X. I don't know. Like when we came into this generation from Xbox One, we've talked about it before. The next gen element was quick resume. It was the speed of the dashboard. It wasn't the games.
Yeah.
And my concern is that, especially when Metroid Prime will be on both, I would imagine. For me, maybe it's just going to be a bit too iterative, and then I'm sure, like James says, it will be in 5 years. We'll have a first-party Nintendo game that's exclusive to Switch 2, and it's going to look incredible. And we'll be saying, "How are they doing this on an Xbox One device?"
Right.
But it's the interim.
Yeah.
It's just I like when I buy new hardware for it to feel like a step up.
It's funny actually you say that, because we may have covered this on System Link before, but I actually remember being a bit disappointed when I got the Series X that it was the same UI as the previous gen. And I understand that it was a huge cross-gen push, especially coming through COVID. I understand the logic behind it, but it still didn't mitigate any disappointment I had. I didn't have the same sense of, oh, here's my new box, here's my upgrade, which when I'm going from a PS5 to a PS5 Pro, I already have the mindset of it being iterative. I already expect that to give me my PS5 experience, but now on upgraded hardware. But the jump from 4 to 5 felt so much bigger, even though it wasn't technologically a huge leap that same gen, as Xbox Series X. But just because of the new outward facing design, it felt like, and the responsiveness and the controller, the going from the DualShock 4 up to the DualSense 5, especially with those adaptive triggers and the haptic feedback, felt like playing The Last of Us Part 2 and feeling the rain dropping on the controller. That's a cool experience beyond just a service, because so much of it was Game Pass Quick Resume services that backwards compatibility. That PS5 has, when I look back and reflect now, has felt like a bigger jump than Xbox did. Just on balance.
Xbox 360 to Xbox One felt like a big jump, even though the launch titles on Xbox One was shit.
I
but
agree.
like playing Rise, there's no way that was a 360 game.
Dead Rising 3 did not,
it
didn't behave like a 360 game at all.
But obviously the Switch is not a 360 spec device. So that's the thing for me. It's not like going from 360 to Xbox One. It's going from like, midway between 360, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's just if that's. I mean, I think there's enough that needs fixing with the Switch that it's fine. But I would have liked it to just be a bit more powerful.
They did address actually some of those iterative changes you mentioned about like the kickstand and battery life. They addressed in the newer Switch standard model and the OLED model, because the OLED had the full back kickstand added to it, which was really nice, and the improved battery life, which is really cool despite the brighter screen. James mentioned a really interesting phrase in chat here about sort of, it's okay, it might be cooler perhaps for Nintendo to just stay in their own lane. They've already captured that hybrid handheld market, so stay in their lane, do the thing that they know works for them. But the design iteration is what I'm hoping to see more of. I'm hoping we see sort of them to be more functionally useful and reliable too. The lack of reliability for those Joy-Cons really affected. I do not play my Switch handheld ever. It's always docked because of how bad the Joy-Cons are, even when clicked in. So yeah, they just
I haven't had I actually can't remember the last time I played it handheld either, but my issue was the wireless connectivity with them. But,
right. Whereas I would always play it on a TV with a Pro controller. That's how I always approach the Switch, because of that reason, which is not how it's really intended to be used. But the Joy-Cons, I didn't find them particularly comfortable to use handheld. My hand would hurt, like back here, I'd get like kind of cramping in my hands because of the way I'd have to grip it. And it did not feel good at all. So far, I have quite limited experience with handheld gaming, as in like this kind of thing. Like, I don't have a Steam Deck, I don't have a ROG Ally, I've never used any of those devices ever. The Steam Deck always looked massive to me, but then I don't know whether, for someone like my friend Jason who has shovels for hands, that would probably like suit quite well. Probably it's probably more of an adult console. Switch definitely skews the younger in its design. So it's proof's in the pudding, right? I just never used it as a handheld particularly. I definitely used it as a home console way more. So what I'm looking for, actually, what I hope turns out to be true, is we get a little power boost. We get the dock does a little something more than just being an expensive piece of plastic that should be an HDMI pass-through. Because that is the shittest part of the Switch, is that fucking dock. that is dismal. I can't stand that thing, and how easy it is for the little bit inside it to break as well. The Switch dock is bad.
Like, as soon as you have kids in the house, like toddlers, or they just brush past the Switch and the dock, and it just falls off.
Yeah,
on the floor, like face down on the floor.
Yeah,
and it's so lightweight that they could have just put some weight in it or anything. But I've seen that it leaked that it needs a more powerful adapter, the dock, I think, because there's a supposedly USB pass through on it, or ability to attach USBs to it or something. Which means it won't be backwards compatible with the dock. But I don't think anyone is worried. No. Like, it would be nice to be able to use the same plug, I guess. But that's
sure. But I'm happy to leave the dock behind. I'm good. Like, I have no issue with that.
The stuff we talked about, I think, was saying they'll make it so the Joy-Cons won't be backwards compatible as a cash grab, which I think it seems as though that is probably going to be the case. It would be nice if you could use them wirelessly. I know you don't care. I don't really care because all mine are fucked. But in terms of, there's tens of millions of people out there, all with £70 Joy-Cons, and they're basically
I do. Even though I won't. Even though we personally won't, that would be a nice feature, because then I think that would open the door for the Pro controllers to be backwards compatible too. Because why would say the Pro controllers work but the Joy-Cons wouldn't? That would be insane to me. They both use wireless as well. So now the question we put out to the community, this is our new feature we have in our System Link podcast, is we kind of put out to everyone a single question that ties to our deep dive. And I wanted to ask it of you first before we go to our community responses. This week's question was, do leaks and spoilers matter to you? Do you want to get the inside scoop, or do you avoid leaks to preserve the surprise?
Yeah, so it depends. It depends for me how excited I am about the thing, and also
Right.
when. So with Gamescom and E3 or Summer Games Fest or whatever, you and I avoid leaks like the
Absolutely.
plague because we like to watch the
We're gonna watch the
event and
show.
experience the announcement. It's getting
Yeah.
so hard to do now.
Yeah.
I think we actually did okay this year for it, but
We
even
actually did the Game Awards. I wasn't spoiled for anything there. You know, we were able to preserve. I think we both. I think this is fair to say we both quite like the pageantry, the sort of sense of hype and announcement around it. Seeing how they present these titles and unpacking whether that was good or not, I think is always really interesting. So
yeah, the hardest bit is actually going on YouTube to find the stream because
yeah,
it's
without
just
looking at
plastered all over
thumbnails.
thumbnails.
Yeah.
Especially if there's been a big announcement. But for something like, because I've talked in the past, I won't be getting the Switch 2 at launch. If I was getting it, it would be years. That probably when there's some exclusive games for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would look at the leaks because it's not
Sure.
going to affect my kind of anticipation for the machine. But and also it kind of depends on how far out it is. Like if there's leaks for the next Xbox, I will feel that I can't possibly avoid that
Right.
leak for the next 2 years or until the console comes out. So if it's like for an event that's coming soon, I'd rather just wait and get it as the developer or publishers intended it to be delivered.
Yeah.
But if it's like, I don't know, conjecture or Digital Foundry are talking about stuff that they've heard, I generally don't mind listening to that. But I don't, especially stuff like brand new game announcements. I hate it when those are spoiled. I would never watch like a trailer before it's supposed to be, unveiled or something, or
Mm-hmm.
like a off camera gameplay footage of
Yeah.
a game that's not been announced yet.
You've defined exactly where my compass lies with this, which is that I actually I'm not bothered about console leaks, about hardware shots. I actually find it quite interesting sometimes to see what people are talking about and how these leaks are often presented, sort of working out what's valid and what's clearly fake. It's games. It's the titles robbing those artists of their reveal and on their own terms. I really, really don't like that. But the plastic box that I'm playing it on, it's always nice to see again how the final product is then advertised. You know, how they choose to market it. Everything is an Xbox approach that they're taking. Obviously, that was always interesting to look at. But the actual design and hardware, I'm not too attached to them as sort of just plastic things. So actually, the leaks for consoles don't generally sort of bother me. I'm happy to sort of click and have a look. But it's the titles, it's the stuff that goes with, especially when it's things like release dates and that kind of stuff. And I want to know, I want to find that out in the gameplay reveal trailer. I want that to be, or the release date trailer. I want to have watched that and see it at the end.
I think also if it's bad news, I would rather know about it. So if it's like Indiana Jones is coming to PlayStation, I'd rather just know. And
Leak
it's being
that.
announced
Don't leak Indiana
Gamescom.
Jones' like sequel or expansion pack. Tell me that it's coming to another platform. As soon as
or
possible.
like
yeah,
Banjo-Kazooie definitely not getting another game announced at E3. I'd rather that just, Jez Corden can say that and say 100% guarantee it's not being announced. I'd rather get that out of the way than have my hopes dashed at the actual event.
But we have to avoid the Aaron Greenberg effect of like the expectations being set too low, where it's like, this show is shit. Don't tune in. It's gonna have you're gonna get an update on Sea of Thieves, and you're gonna see the same State of Decay trailer you've seen twice before. That's don't lower the expectations so much. Build some semblance of hype and interest there. I had that for years with Beyond Good and Evil 2. I had that sort of idea of like, it was never confirmed either way until after the E3 happened, where then they wouldn't show anything again, and then they say, we're still working on it. Like once every couple of years, Eve would acknowledge it, and then that would be all we'd hear about it. That just breaks my heart. I had to have the removal from it and just go, I would have to assume that it's not going to be there. So then when it finally did show up, that surprise was then preserved, and I wasn't spoiled for that, which was really, really cool. It's obviously still in development hell, and whether that game even exists anymore, I don't know. So that's kind of, I think, where we sit on that. I think quite similar perspectives. When we put this out to our Discord community, by the way, find us on Discord at Burly Media. If you're listening to the podcast now on Podbean or Spotify, or you found us on YouTube, a day later. The kind of central question of we've just discussed was what we put to the community, and Big Manny coming straight in, first comment. I actually just want to read this exactly as it is because it's a really interesting perspective. I personally don't like leaks very much because it usually ruins the surprise of a game I'm excited for. On the other hand, it'll get you excited for a game that isn't coming out because the leaks are fake. So there can be that sort of like possibility of what could happen, even if it's not like a real leak per se of something actually genuine. It's sort of exciting the imagination of what could be as an element that he quite likes. That's an interesting idea.
Some games are so scarce with the information they release, as like GTA. The trailer's always so good, and everyone's so hyped for them that I feel like people do just want stuff to leak about GTA.
Yeah,
it's like I would love to see gameplay footage now of GTA, and if it leaked, here's 5 minutes of GTA gameplay, I'd probably go and watch it just because I really want to see it.
Just want to know.
And I feel like a bit like Nintendo, where the reason it's leaked is because they've left it so late to announce it. The reason people want GTA stuff is because we still haven't seen much on it.
Right.
Yeah, what we've seen has been great, but
and any leaks were old. Leaks were like 3 years old footage, which is obviously not even close to being relevant now.
So it's kind of I definitely agree though. For a game like Elder Scrolls, the next Elder Scrolls game, I would avoid any leaks for that until Bethesda are ready to announce. It's a game I don't want it to be spoiled.
I don't want Fable. I don't want Fable to be leaked. I don't want South of Midnight to be leaked. I want those to be protected experiences for me. I want to see them when they're proper gameplay, and that's it. You know.
Well, and I actually go even further with I do it with Star Trek as well. I won't watch other than like the first trailer,
right?
Or like a sizzle, like a short trailer. I would never watch for like Fable or Elder Scrolls or something. I wouldn't watch like a 10-minute gameplay demo because I don't. Right. If they like show you the first boss in the game or something for 10 minutes, I don't want to see that. I want that to be me. I want to experience that in the game. I know I'm going to buy the game, so I don't need to see 10 minutes of gameplay. Something like Avowed is different because I'm not that like. I don't care that much about Avowed, but there's a few titles and TV series and things that I will be really selective.
That's definitely an interesting point of differentiation. I feel like we're sneaking in a preview of Plasma Conduit, our new podcast, but I lap up anything Star Trek. So
I know you do, and you're always like, here's a new trailer,
clip, and you're like, stop it, you're blocked. I lap up any clip or extended look at any of that stuff. I'm just like, give it to me. I want it.
You're gonna watch it anyway, so wouldn't you?
I want to watch it now. But that's the thing. It's relative, isn't it? It's relative to your excitement. Plugsocket's point, which I thought was really interesting, mentioning leaks are fun when they're true. Misinformation is a very easy thing that can get through to people. Yeah, that sort of deliberate. We've had it a number of times. We've questioned sort of other quote unquote journalists. They may not deem themselves to be so, but we've seen a number of people sort of try to almost kind of weasel their way out of their own reporting when it turns out to be untrue, sort of claiming that their sources let them down, or perhaps I was just sharing my opinion, whereas at the time it's definitely framed as something genuine and real. So as much as leaks for certain things can be interesting, or as Plugsocket says, fun, it's very easy also for misinformation to spread about projects, and that can be, a really, really tricky thing. So just have a look here. Let's going down my list.
Yeah, I think that the two worst ones for me. There's been loads of games spoiled before, like E3 or something. But the two, like on that note of where there's misinformation, the GameCube Virtual Console for Wii, wasn't it?
That's right.
Or was it for Switch? I can't remember.
No, it was for the. No, it was for Switch.
I guess it was for Switch.
It was for Switch.
Yeah, it was basically guaranteed. I think Eurogamer said,
"Yep,
it's coming to Switch." And
they're developing. They even cited the games that were
happened.
going to be in the first wave. I remember that. To this day, Smash Brothers, Luigi's Mansion, like they stated, Super Mario Sunshine. They unequivocally said those 3 games are in the first wave.
And then after that, they were like, "Oh, plans change."
Plans change.
So Nintendo had
doesn't
it.
mean the rumor wasn't true.
And and then shelved it. And then the other one, more recently, is the Xbox games going to PlayStation stuff that leaks. you get different games leaking all the time. You had Forza Horizon supposedly going before Christmas. People were saying Starfield was definitely going like at launch and things. Everyone's saying Gears of War, and like none of that stuff's happening. So yet,
but that
it was so bad that they had to do the just 4 games, the business update thing, because the leaks were so bad about it. It's
right. But then
crazy.
also, like, I don't then think Gears of War then being eventually coming to PlayStation one day, if that happens, makes the leak accurate. Because the leak was that it's coming, as in imminently. And I don't think you then get to say, when it's 2 years later, well, I told you. That's not a leak. That you just guessed, and you guessed right
Exactly.
2 years before it actually happened. I don't think that's any sort of insider scoop, particularly to celebrate. Demon Adam mentioning in the Discord as well that leaks are often leaked on purpose to create hype. I've always wondered if Ubisoft deliberately leaks stuff. I've always had that theory with them. I think they're the most leakachuist company that I could think of. Interestingly, he follows up by saying, I'm not a fan of them either way because it can create a false expectation of a developing product. And I think the key phrase there being a developing product, something that's still cooking. In many ways, I think Ubisoft, again, off their own back here, with the way they showed that sort of awkward off-camera footage of Beyond Good and Evil 2 when they were on stage that 1E3, didn't give anyone a clear idea at all of what the gameplay looked like, and it looked really super early, like pre-alpha.
It is interesting, though, like... when you get games that, when they're showed at E3, they're running on like ultra high PC specs, or even beyond that, like specs that aren't in the final game. That's a problem. You'd almost be better with a leaked build of the game,
right,
that is showing like representative gameplay as opposed to like a polished, touched up version.
Right. Well, on that, Lila in Discord mentioned that I don't like it when companies leak a game and hype it up, only to have it then be an underwhelming experience. She cited Five Nights at Freddy's security breach leak, which was hyped up so much, but the actual game was really buggy and didn't resemble any of the teaser trailers at all. So that's where, again, those false expectations are then created, because it just doesn't then match up with the quality of what the leaks are suggesting the final game's going to be.
Yeah, we on the subject of deliberate leaks as well, I think we've said in the past whether some of the Xbox games going to PlayStation have been deliberate leaks to see how angry the community gets about certain games. I don't know. It's hard because I think every time that stuff gets leaked, it damages Xbox's brand a little bit.
Well,
obviously not as badly as if it actually happened, but you can't just keep... It's not good to have all this discourse about games going to PlayStation all the time. So, yeah, I don't know if they are actually leaking stuff,
but yeah, I mean the court document stuff during the Activision Blizzard CMA stuff, when a lot of that stuff leaked, that I think, like James mentioned in the Discord earlier, like malicious leaks are bad. That you wonder
that was a from like a games industry perspective, that sort of leak is quite useful, I think, to know what, because Microsoft don't tell us their strategy. They're very vague. We've complained for ages about how they're deliberately vague with their information, and having that and seeing like Phil Spencer candidly talking in emails about whatever he was wanting to buy Nintendo or whatever it was. There's some really bad thing that he said. I can't remember what it was. It's interesting because it's a side that we don't get to see. They're normally like polished and PR all over them.
They just, but they don't talk about these. They're so withdrawn with a lot of this stuff. And actually, Asa mentioned in the Discord chat as well. It raised the question for him as sort of like a follow-up question: does the industry invite the challenges with things like leaks by being so unnecessarily secretive? And does,
I think certain publishers absolutely do, because Microsoft don't share sales figures. They haven't done for ages. Some, like we've said about Final Fantasy, where they had the date the exclusivity window finished. You've got that on one side, and you've got on the other side Black Myth Wukong, where we haven't got a clue what's going on.
Right.
So if it leaks, a developer at that team comes out and says, "Oh, it's not coming to Xbox because the Series S is shit." That's a leak, and it's happened because they haven't clarified what the situation is. And can you really argue like that's a bad leak, or
Right.
it shouldn't have happened, or get cross with the guy for doing it, because it's easily fixed by Microsoft or the team that makes the
Being
game, or
explicit and
PlayStation
yeah.
saying this is the situation.
Absolutely. James in chat mentioned that you can always manage expectations versus the final product if they leak it in a sneaky way. If they do something that's sort of like, done in a sly way to excuse me, as we sort of mentioned, like to test the waters almost, to see how people are going to respond. But when so much of the industry is obscured and we see so little of this, when you do get that little unexpected peek behind the curtain, sometimes you do have to wonder, as Asa pointed out as well, are they making a rod for their own back? Are they sort of keeping things so close to the chest that it's then creating a culture where insider scoops and reports, quote unquote, and sourcing or anonymous tips are then becoming more prevalent because there's this need to sort of protect IP and keep things so close to the chest? Not an easy conversation. Fundamentally, I think the biggest impact for all of this is on the devs themselves. Plugsocket mentioned in the chat, imagine spending months, years on a project just for someone inside, and it could be like a contractor or someone that's not actually part of your core dev team, just releasing everything, just dumping a bunch of work in progress files online. For solo devs, small indie teams, it's less because they're a smaller scale, but these large multi-team, hundreds upon hundreds of devs under one roof, they must have to battle with that risk all the time, and it must be deflating, especially if the response to the leak of that very early work in progress work is really negative as well. It's not just the leak itself, but it's then I can't believe they've spent 2 years on this, even though it's not ready to be shown yet, and it's
and there's like with Assassin's Creed, people leaking malicious stuff about the game, features that are in the game that they're not satisfied with, and that gets all the communities back up. And one good thing is if a game gets cancelled, and then like often years later, I forget what the name of the website is. There's a website that often features
Unseen64.
And that's great. I don't think you can really complain about that, getting to see footage for games that never.
If the projects have been completely canned, and often in those cases it can be that the developer no longer exists. It's not like there's any record of that team. That title was never going to see the light of day. That I think is always fascinating to look at. Whether it's design documents, some early concept art, maybe even some prototype footage. I always love checking that stuff out because it's a real what-if exploration. And I don't feel like you're stepping on anyone's toes there. No one's losing out in terms of finance. There's no other than the sunk costs of the actual development that's obviously then been absorbed elsewhere, or they've just bankrupted and gone. But also, there's no emotional cost to that because that game was never going to see the light of day. So, hey, why don't we put it out there and just show people what could have been? And I think that is quite a one silver lining in a very complex issue. James coming into chat saying, I saw it happen most with GTA 6, but also worth noting, leaks spreading of very early or build footage that then people who don't really understand game design, they then make a judgment on it and say, oh, it's shit. It's just the same as GTA 5. That's a good point, is people's sort of perception of a game can be then skewed incorrectly because of perhaps ignorance to the development process. They don't understand that it's early.
Yeah, like when you have wireframes or like placeholder textures in and things, and people are like,
what the hell's this?
Yeah. What have they done to GTA?
Yeah. Well, folks, that would about wrap it up for our first episode of System Link of 2025. Mike, thank you again, as always, for joining me as my ever-loyal co-host. You can find us, Burly Bird Media, on all of the things, Threads, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Spotify, and YouTube, at Burly Bird Media. And we'll be back this Saturday with a Burly Bird Live, featuring Mike and myself playing something. We never know what we're going to be until the day. Keep it locked to our Discord to find out what game we're going to be playing. But we will continue, I think, our community questions alongside our deep dive. That was a huge success for me. The responses were great. Thank you, everyone that weighed in. And obviously, shout out to all of you that got a mention, obviously, tonight in tonight's episode. Mike, as the editor-in-chief of and creator of the Xbox Guide, where can people find you?
The xboxguide.com, on Threads, on Blue Sky now as well, with the meta stuff that's going on at the moment. So check us out on there. I'll be doing a feature probably tomorrow or Friday on just like a review of Game Pass in 2024 versus 2023. So that's, it should be going on in the next couple of days. But otherwise, yeah, looking forward to Saturday.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for tuning in. I hope you have a lovely rest of your week. We'll be putting up the video on demand version of this episode on Thursdays alongside our brand new audio flavour for System Link. So you'll be able to get a podcast version of our show available on Podbean and Spotify for free. And we'll be kicking off our next series of updates in terms of games coverage that will be starting from next Monday. Also, a quick shout out, please check out Dulcet Tones, episode 3, new episode with Stephen Murray, the voice of the DJ from Knockout City. It is our performing arts podcast, so if you're interested in anything creative, anything artistic, we're talking this week in this latest episode about aspirational projects, dreams, things that we're hoping to achieve, and how we get the motivation to get there and continue working towards them. So
I was really hoping you were going to say the voice of Nigel Knife there, which would have been a massive disservice to Stephen Murray
and his career. Yeah, exactly. Also, check out that video, not only the stream that he did in character as Nigel Knife on Burly Bird Live, one of my favourite things we've ever shot actually as a live stream. That VOD is on YouTube, and you can check that out. But Mike has a 3-minute montage that sets up the context for that wacky character and that ongoing recurring bit over on his Xbox Guide YouTube channel. Just search for that up. It's really good fun to check out the context around that silly recurring bit. James, thank you so much for tuning in and for the well wishes plug socket as well. And Big Manny for checking out Dulcet Tones. Really appreciate your support as always. Folks, we will see you next time.